Gentlemen, it's the Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. I'm Rob.
I'm Randy.
And we have a guest today, actually. So we have joining us, we have Aaron Parham. He's going to talk to us today a little bit about the ecological approach of jiu-jitsu. I know it's a subject me and Randy have talked about for the last few episodes, so I think it's actually good. We're going to get a little bit of guidance, I guess, for so maybe I could be a little more educated because we already know I'm the skeptic of the whole thing because I don't know why. I don't know why. So let's figure out why I'm the skeptic of this, and then we'll go from there. So, Aaron, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem.
So before we get started, could you give like a background to our listeners to see, or just let them know, like, how you started, like what drew you to jiu-jitsu and what you're kind of teaching now and stuff like that.
Yeah, so again, Aaron, originally from Lake Charles, Louisiana. Grew up Southwest Louisiana and started training when I was in college. I think I was around 21, 22. But early UFC days and I remember watching a couple, but I was in a band and college lifestyle back then and partying and smoking and all that stuff. So, but I had a New Year's resolution to, start training and getting in shape. And I remember a lot of my friends were sharing our New Year's resolutions, and I said that, and they all kind of made fun of me and laughed about it. So I was like, all right, I'm actually going to do it. So I went and signed up like the next week. So I started in like the first week of January that year, and yeah, I've been doing it ever since. Some breaks here and there, but yeah. So I trained in Louisiana for a couple years. Got up to blue belt, and then I joined the military, joined the Marines after college. Didn't train much while I was in the Marines. I did the Marine Corps martial arts, deployed a couple times to Afghanistan, got out in 2014, and I've moved around a little bit, and I've been in Charleston, South Carolina since 2014, and I've been training consistently since then, minus the couple COVID years. We were all out for a little bit, but been training consistently since then, trying to coach and learn to teach since purple belt then. Got my brown belt in 2018. Yeah, and just been kind of training and trying to figure out the best way to teach and coach since then.
Nice. So yeah, the COVID years kind of fucked everybody up on that one. We all
Yeah,
got just pause. I mean, totally did not train in any secret groups or anything like that. But so you mentioned kind of learning how to teach and stuff, and I guess that kind of goes in where we're talking about the ecological approach versus like a traditional approach and stuff. So with learning how to teach, just kind of traveling through, coming up with your own style, like, what drew you to the ecological approach for teaching?
Yeah, so I mean, I didn't actually start going down that path until, Greg came out and told everyone, this is what it is. And I kind of, found the literature and all the right words and what it was. But I mean, even in around 2015, when I started, taking over classes and teaching, like one of the first things I immediately, I started in the traditional format of like, all right, I'm going to show what I know, a couple techniques, a warm up. I used to be a big warm up guy, like planks and, a lot of rolling, like that kind of stuff. It was kind of came with the military. Got rid of that really quickly, but I would show a couple things and then rolling at the end. But even I got bored with that like really quickly, and I was like, there's got to be more to and I would go to other classes or like sometimes you leave class and you're not even sweating or you don't even have to
Mhm.
wash your gi, and I'm like, I don't like that. Like I want to go work out. And so I started trying to come up with ways to have classes to do kind of things like that. And it was trying to figure out how to build in resistance for the other person that we normally just say, lay there and let me do it.
Yep.
So I was trying to figure it all out on my own for a while, but definitely once I found the right, resources to kind of guide me, it made a lot more sense of how to, structure all this stuff. But yeah, for
So,
years, go ahead.
so when did you mentioned Greg and you're referring to Greg Souders, right?
Yeah.
So when did you first interact with Greg? When was that?
That was in November of 22. I think he did a podcast with Sonny Brown, and it's like one of the first podcasts he did. And I'm a Reddit mod too, was for a while, and it got posted up on there, and I listened to it, and it was making a whole lot of sense. And then, but Reddit was completely torn uh, on it. So I was like, I'm kind of interested in what he's saying is making sense, and it's making sense to what I've been trying to do. Um, and then I work for the Navy, so I happened to be going up to DC anyway, um, like that, a couple weeks later. So I was like, I'm going to drop in to his
Hmm.
class, and I went to a class. I messaged him a couple times, talked to him. But just kind of went in there and did a class. I did the foundations class, and then I did the all levels class after that. And I went back to my hotel room afterwards and like filled up a notepad full of. I was like, it all like kind of clicked immediately. Um,
So, and touching on that, because I know like right now, man, the internet is blasting Greg left and right. Some are lovers, some are haters, some are just kind of on the fence in between. And we see all that on the Discord channel, which we'll talk about here in a minute too. Um, what when you went there to his gym, because I definitely plan on going up there at some point. It's not that far away. How was it? Was he welcoming? What was the atmosphere like? What was the foundations class like?
yeah, I mean, the gym it's, I mean, obviously it looks a little intimidating. It's all black and everyone's, going at it like immediately, not like going at it 100%, but everyone's training and it looks like a room, for someone like me, like I walked in and like, all right, this is gonna be fun. Like immediately everyone, but yeah, he's super welcoming. I don't understand the hate he gets from anybody. Like he's one of the nicest people I've ever met. He's just very passionate about what he believes in, and I think that comes across to some people as off-putting. But yeah, it was very welcoming. All the students. Yeah, I went into a foundations class. It was just a basic guard passing game class, and I was with a guy who was just a hobbyist. I think blue belt, and he was getting married the next week, and we were like, you know, I was like, damn, all right, this is a good
Yeah.
time. And then
Um,
the all levels I went with I don't know if you've seen him on their videos, but Brian Guevara.
mhm.
And we just did trading back takes for an hour, and it was a whole different experience for me. So
Yeah, definitely, and I'll be honest, I was one of the ones in the beginning. I got exposed to the ecological dynamics and some of the CLA stuff through a law enforcement related class. It wasn't even through jiu-jitsu initially. I was a big concepts guy. Rob knows that. I'm always been about trying to teach more conceptually than just straight up technique all the time. Um, I always felt like if your students understood the why behind things, they would be able to adapt to it and to their style and be able to get through some of those weird positions and dilemmas that we get into that don't fit what you've learned in your class. You know what I mean?
hmm
But I didn't really understand what was there was I always felt like there was something missing there, and I feel like a lot of these things I'm learning now are kind of filling those voids. But I was one of the ones early on that thought that the way I described it, and I actually messaged him and flat out freaking told him this, that I initially thought not, and I didn't say this to him, and I said it to him on the other end when I was actually apologizing. I would never message somebody and just talk shit. Rob knows me enough to know I wouldn't do that. But I will take ownership of if I'm wrong. And so I sent him a message on Instagram, was like, you don't even know me, but I owe you an apology because I really thought that you were a pretentious douchebag. The way he came across in some of his verbiage in some of his videos that I listened to or his podcasts where people were challenging his framework or his thought process, the lingo that he used that seemed so advanced because he's put in all this work to study the science. It just came across that way. But then when you really start learning it and you put in the legwork and learn the meanings behind what he's saying, and then you really start paying attention to how many podcasts he does or has done recently and how willing he is just to give away information for free, I realized this guy can't be a douchebag. Like
yeah,
he's not making a shit ton of money doing what he's doing. He's giving it away for free. He just wants people to get better at jiu-jitsu. That's all he cares about is improving his ability, his athlete's abilities, and people being able to do the same for themselves. And so now I'm like, no, I want to go up there and train and experience for myself because I'm running classes like this, but obviously from what you're saying, it sounds like most of my classes are probably the equivalent of his foundations classes. You know what I mean?
hmm Yeah, he's and that's the thing. Is like I don't understand how people don't understand that about him. Like he's really not selling anything. And people still say that. Like it's just new marketing on stuff we're already done. Like well, it's not like
Mm.
no one's selling anything. But yeah, and you don't have to read the books or get into the literature or read papers or anything. But all he's doing is he's not he's not trying to redefine words that are already understood.
Mm.
So he's just using the words that already exist to explain things. And I think that's a lot of the headache people have in other systems like 10th Planet systems and Danaher, with the J point and all this stuff. Like you have to recontextualize everything because they're making up their own words to describe things that, you
Yeah.
know. So all it is just he's trying to be consistent in his language
Mhm.
and clear and you know you can't hate him for that. And
Now, when you went there, and then this is gonna, I want to lead back into you. Did he talk to his students like that? Because I feel like in his videos he says he doesn't.
no, not at all. I
Uh,
mean, yeah, and we've talked about that offline, like at the camps and stuff. But there are certain students that he has that will, that are, uh, and this is his words, but if they're getting deeper into it, or they're competitors, or they're going down the coaching path, obviously they're going to get more immersed into it. But in his class, it is very like I don't even know what grade level. It's sixth grade level instructions, like very clear instructions. Here's what you got to do. Here's what I want you to do. You want you to go from here to here. Got it. Go. But
yeah.
yeah, it's like there's no three-syllable words or anything that's hard to understand. Literally, I think kids could take his class and understand it.
Well, and I think that's the true measure of expertise, in my opinion. When you really master something, for lack of a better term, I don't feel like we ever really truly master something, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
When you have a deep understanding of something, it shows when you can simplify it so that anybody can understand it. That's my opinion. Um,
Yeah, and I think, and this goes to a different topic, but I think that's also a challenge that I've had and probably some other people have, but that gets misperceived as we don't know a depth of knowledge about what we're doing.
mhm.
Um, because you can't, if once you can explain something and give people clear instructions to do a game and a task, like some people might see that as, well, you don't really understand grappling or you don't really understand
Right.
jiu-jitsu and what we're doing to
Mhm.
a depth to explain the technique that you're trying to get to. Like, no, we do, but you have to be able to explain it without, explicitly telling them what to do.
I want to we got to get Rob to experience a typical class like this. I think Rob's mind would be blown on how it works because I know how he rolls and he'd benefit from it. But we got to get him to experience it because I mean, it to me. I think when you coach it, honestly, to me, and I'm still going through the transition. It was humbling how you have to look at jiu-jitsu from a completely different perspective when you're teaching it this way.
Yeah.
And if anything, you have to have a deeper depth of knowledge of jiu-jitsu in order to build effective games.
Yeah. You just don't have to, your students don't have to know that. Like
Right.
you don't have to prove yourself to them that
Exactly. Yeah.
you know it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Go ahead, Rob.
I was just gonna say, like, I just want to finally say something about it. So, like, we've talked about it. I know people are like, it's either one or the other, and I really try not to be a one or the other type of person when it comes to teaching, because like taught traditional martial arts, taught jujitsu. I was an instructor when I was in the army. Like, everybody learns in a different way, right? And I, even from the outside skeptical perspective, anybody who says like, well, you guys teach that way just because you don't know it, I think that's extremely foolish. That's a really, really foolish viewpoint of it. But I think it's more or less from the people I've talked to who are kind of against it. I don't know about you because I feel like you've had to defend it a bit more. It almost seems like, and this is my own opinion too in the beginning, was that it's more of it might be a quick fix or like how to get good quick by not doing as many reps type situation. That's at least with the way people have explained it. And that was kind of my viewpoint in the beginning as well. More I've talked to Randy, I see there's maybe some merit to like a hybrid type of teaching. Is that something that you guys believe in, or is it just straight like conceptual, ecological, like instruction?
Randy, you want to take that one?
My opinion has changed as I've gotten deeper into this. Like I think I encourage people to through the conversation in the Discord too, it kind of had this epiphany of you almost learn how to implement this method ecologically, which is kind of ironic. Um, in that I used to think that it needed to be a hybrid. I don't think it's a all or never in the sense of you should never directly teach anything, but I think that that should make up a very, 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 very small sliver of what you spend your time doing. And it should be specific to like you put your student into a game, you give them the problem, right? Don't give them the answer first, give them the problem first. Let them kind of explore that for a little bit and troubleshoot with it. Uh, and then if something starts to happen, if they start to develop an affinity for, let's just say, like a single leg, if that's related to the problem you put them in, then there's nothing wrong with if there's a specific thing that could help them with their single leg, providing a little bit of guidance to that. So I think it's almost like flipping the script. Like you go into a typical jiu-jitsu class, you just teach a technique. So we're going to teach a single leg to run the pipe finish. And you just do that with repetition without resistance in the beginning. And then we have them either situationally spar or roll at the end of class. It's almost like think about almost flipping that on its head to where we're going to have them in the problem first. And then we're going to see what comes out naturally because you may not, depending on like for me, trying to run the pipe on somebody who's 6'5", that shit ain't going to happen because I'm 5'5". So you talk about that goes into you start talking about affordances and things of that nature for different people. They're gonna look different. They're gonna see things different from each other, and so it doesn't seem right to try to force upon them a specific technique or a specific answer to a problem that doesn't even exist yet. So to answer your question from my perspective is I don't even look at it. I used to look at it like, hey, let's do a little bit of a hybrid. Now it's like, no, 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 no. Let's put them in the problem. Let's see what comes out. And then we can either modify the constraints in the game to help them get better at what's coming out naturally for them. Or on a side note, maybe after class, and I've done this before, if there's a specific thing, very, very specific to what's coming out for them, I can help them clean that up a little bit directly with them individually. But it's tough in a class setting because you have 15, 20 students that are all doing slightly different things. And so I think the best way to adjust that is to adjust the constraints on the game so that they can improve in whatever whatever you're seeing come out for the majority of the class. Aaron, how do you think about that?
No, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, for me, it's like I was having this discussion the other day with a couple guys who were interested in my gym, but like they were like, well, I can see how this would be beneficial for, more advanced people or what, but how would you teach beginners? Because, they don't understand if you put them in a situation and have them play from that situation. Like I feel like you would need to show them things first, to have context of the game. Like, and I had the same argument back to them. I was like,
Hmm.
well, imagine it's your first day in class and you come and we're doing K guard sweeps. Like, you're not going to have a clue what that even means or like where that fits in the whole structure of the game. So like, in my perfect world, if I was teaching beginners, I would run them through like a multi-week program of playing in every part of the game so that you understand the entire context. Like, all right, now you've played every little piece of the game, and you understand what all the problems are. Now we're gonna now we're gonna focus on them and kind of dissect them a little bit. So and with like the two different learning styles, we have this conversation on Discord all the time, but like the assumptions from traditional and the assumptions of ecological are kind of opposed to one another. So it's the discussion of whether or not they can be mixed or hybrid. To me, and I'm up to be challenged or proven wrong, but to me they can't fit. It's oil and water because you have direct perception versus information based learning. Like, you know, do you believe that I have to tell you something before you do it, or like Randy, like you said, like, is it better for you to experience the problem, and then diagnose it? And that's kind of how I like to do it. Like if someone's never, pick a situation like referee's position or turtle, attacking turtle, like someone who's never been to a class doing that before, like would you want to sit down there and lecture them on all the things that we're going to do, or say, let's run a diagnostic game, try to do your best, get their hips on the mat, that's it, and then figure out what they can and can't do already, or what they figure out on their own already, and then we'll diagnose that into smaller games and like, all right, like now we're going to hone in or get you kind of closer. You can specify some of the information like, all right, this is where you need to focus more of your attention on, and here's your goal. To me, that makes more sense for them to understand how that even fits in the whole game in the first place.
Well, what I was trying to explain to a friend of mine, it was trying to apply these concepts to law enforcement, specifically firearms training. So, I mean, it's a really any motor skill, right? Um, and there was a lot of resistance encountered there, and it was very much the same conversation. Um, and he wanted to basically run them through a very specific draw stroke from the holster, presentation of the weapon, from the very beginning of the class, just dry fire, nothing, nothing going down range yet, all these very specific things like A, B, C, D, one, two, three, in these sequence of steps, and eventually layer on to where they're shooting and then shooting on the move and doing all these things. And I'm like, it's not that that won't work. It's not a question of that there's all or nothing. Like if you do this, 0% learning is going to take place. And if you do this, 100% learning is going to take place. It's like optimal versus suboptimal. And I just told him, I was like, you think about it like this, and it's the same with jiu-jitsu. Day one, day one white belt. And you tell them, okay, I want you to, we're going to talk about arm bars from guard. Well, there in their world, there's no reason why guard should exist yet. They don't understand why that's even a thing. Why am I wrapping my legs around this person's waist and he's on top of me? Why am I now trying to attack from this position? Like, why? I don't understand. And it's the same thing shooting a gun. Like you're trying to talk about a draw stroke, a presentation, so that, but specifically in that context, we're transitioning to optics for our pistols. And so we're trying to, get our officers accustomed to using optics versus their front sight. And so that's what he's talking about. And I'm like, well, it's actually even better because they already have context of what a draw looks like, right? But if you don't have them go out there, I mean, in my opinion, that's what I told him. I said, in my opinion, if you're asking me what I would do, I would take them out there with that optic on their gun already, have it in their holster, and we're shooting rounds. Like I'm gonna have you on the line, everything's be safe. Hey, on the command to fire, once you draw your holster, fire 5 rounds down target, right? And have them realize what the problem is. The problem is most of them are going to struggle to find their optic the first time they fire 5 rounds, right? And why is that? Because first of all, their draw is going to be wrong, at least for what they're for the gear they're using. And second, when the muzzle flip occurs, the optic is going to disappear from their view for a second. And so have them experience that. And then after 5 rounds, be like, hey, who here had trouble finding their optics? What were some issues that we had there? Oh, well, I couldn't even find it in the beginning. I was like moving the muzzle around trying to find it. Second time, but hey, I had a problem. I found it at first, but then when I fired, I couldn't find it again. Cool. And then you say, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? No, I didn't try that. Okay, cool. Go and try it again. And the first time they find their optic and then find it again and they have that like epiphany moment, that's where the learning is occurring, in my opinion. Like it's that light bulb moment. And so it's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. If you just throw them into guard without any context of why guard exists, right? Then it's not going to stick, and then when it's not going to transfer when you put them into roles in a couple months. So I feel like that's why it blows my mind and why it works so well is that you're introducing them to the problem, they're seeing it, they're experiencing it, and then now you can start to insert other constraints or things to show them a direction, and then they have that light bulb. We all know that light bulb. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, because I do this same thing, like as you guys, because you've been training a while, but like play close guard, or when someone tries to put you in close guard, how hard do you fight it to not happen? Like I
Yeah.
haven't been like I fight close guard so hard and probably haven't been in close guard in a long time. But yeah, new white belts come in like, all right, wrap your legs around me. We're gonna like why? Why
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
why do we do that?
What are you thinking over there, Rob?
Well, So the one thing I do absolutely agree on is the fact that warm up should not take 20 fucking minutes, man. I hate that so much, dude. Like, and if we do warm up, because I'm sitting here and my brain's like, working a bit. When I run warm ups, it's like, okay, do a couple shrimps, make sure you're stretched, grab a partner, get them off balance. Start working whatever works right. Because like you're saying earlier, I have people of varying degrees, so I'll show like, hey, set them up this way and work on trying to get them to do this, right? I don't have somebody your size going against Big John trying to run the pipe. I say, what works for you? What's your favorite takedown? Set that up, start moving that, and then switching it up. And we do that maybe for 5 minutes, like between switching up. But then we do jump into going over what technique there is, and I try my best if I have different levels to go, you guys are going to do this, you guys are going to do this, and I try to go back and forth as much as I can while they work. And obviously not lay there because I hate that too, because
Hmm.
nobody ever grapples a fish.
Right.
Like I hate that. But I like rolling, but that's just me. I like to roll. That's all I like to do, really. Like if I had my choice and they're like, hey, you need to teach classes forever, it'd be kind of just like rolling. But I know for me and my own, I guess, craziness, I still got to kind of show somebody like an arm can only go backwards so many different ways.
Mm.
Like, I don't know if this is lining up with like stuff you guys are saying, but like I legit try to bend arms in ways that like don't like it's not right, like not traditionally right. Like I had somebody the other day try to Imanari roll on me, and I pinched his leg in between my thigh and put my head on his chest and just grabbed under his elbow and just picked it up and like subbed him because I want to do weird stuff like that.
Mm.
Like I don't know if that's lining up or not, but
Yeah, and I think that's along the lines of what Greg says when he talks about destabilization. Because a lot of people hear the word destabilize and they think that's knocking someone from standing to the ground or like a sweep. And that's where a lot of people's minds go. But he went really in depth to that at the camp we did and talked about from like a dynamic systems approach. Destabilizing a system is taking away its function. So, like you're saying, like even in guard or playing half guard, when you head under someone's chin and extend their body, or you get someone's head off of alignment and pin it to their shoulder, you're destabilizing their system and taking away power somewhere. So yeah, twisting an arm any way you can. For people who have been training a while, there's really no value to go to a class to you know grab a Kimura on someone who's not resisting and then practice like twisting it. We all know how to break an arm at this point. Like,
Hmm.
but doing those things in a movement in order to stop another movement or stop them from being able to do some other function are the things you're going to pick up in a role as you're doing those kind of things.
Yeah, 100%.
it's cool to
Um,
know.
and then with the camp, you just mentioned the camp. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that kind of that was an idea, like a dream, like when the Discord started, like it'd be cool to have a camp of just you know this kind of training or like the coaches that are doing it to kind of to spread it. And then I think around November of last year, a couple of us got together and we're like, well, let's see if we can get, you know, so and so people to be involved in it. And they all agreed immediately. And we're like, so we put it out and hosted it, and it sold out in a couple days. So we were all kind of surprised. And yeah, it was beginning of May. Um, the video should be coming out here in the next couple weeks. We just got them come out of production, but it was, I mean, it went off, no issues at all. I think it was really productive. We had one full day of kind of just classroom setting, sitting around the mat talking. Greg did a couple sessions to explain his framework, explained how he scales games in different ways to different, you know, um, levels in the class. We had Scott Seaverite from Primal, Ed Ingmels from the UK, Josh Peacock, who does Combat Learning podcasts. He's really knowledgeable, and then Rob Cole, who's a Globetrotters, and then it was hosted at 10th Planet in Springfield. But yeah, so we got all these coaches together, one day just talking about coaching, gym culture, that kind of stuff. And then the second 2 days were just 1 hour blocks of, how they run classes at their gym. So you kind of get to see, you know, different through different people's lenses of how they apply this in their classes, and it was really fun. So those videos should
That's
be coming out soon.
how many people attended that?
There were 55 spots, and then on top of a couple other uh, people around, so there was about 60 people there total.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah,
It does make me happy to hear like when camps are successful, man. Like 'cause the more training out there, the better. Especially like I think there's room for everything. In my like that's just my opinion because
yeah, and I know Rob Cole's talked about this too, and I just want to say the same thing. Is like for me, you put all the ecological stuff aside, and then we can argue about that all day long. But I think the real value is that people are taking an interest in being more serious about coaching instead of just it showing up and it kind of not being um, taken seriously.
yeah,
So if anything, I think this whole kind of ecological movement has got a group of people who are taking coaching seriously and you know designing practices, looking for ways to like make an hour a lot more fun for people.
yeah. Because I mean, I've said it multiple times. Randy can tell you my ramblings. I get on good rants about stuff when we're in person. I think like one of the biggest issues that in martial arts in general is the professional level or a certain level of professionalism with teaching or coaching or mentoring. Because like in all fairness, the majority of people who come into the gym aren't just looking to like, hey, rolling around with other people looks like a lot of fun. Like there's always something else that comes with it too. Like
Yeah,
it's getting confidence or self-discipline, stuff like that. But having gone to some gyms as drop-ins, I'm like, this is probably not the like most conducive place for like a healthy learning style or a way to learn or a place to learn, or like we've all been in the gym of like, hey, just don't tap the Kimuras. You just got to fight out of it. It's gonna be fine. And then we all got fucked up rotator cuffs now. So I'm glad that that has happened. That is like one of the like biggest things for me because I think this sport would grow even more and get out of the whole like still the I guess the outdated view of everybody who's doing jujitsu is a bunch of guys who want to do the UFC and they just rip people's arms out and they beat the shit out of each other and their IQ is like maybe in the 40s type level thinking and taking it into a professional type of profession, obviously, but that I think is going to cause the biggest like growth in the sport as well between the exposure to it from mainstream and then having instructors who like you're talking about actually care about learning how to coach, how to mentor their students and just how to be a good leader in general.
Well, I mean, education just needs to evolve in general, not even just in jiu-jitsu, but across the board. I mean, you think about just the way the standard classroom is run in a high school or a college, it's just not really conducive to the most efficient learning most of the time. And then, athletic development in other sports pays crazy money, right? Because these professional athletes stand to make millions. I think jiu-jitsu has just been behind the curve in the way that they train and they learn. So I think I agree. I mean, well, I probably mispronounce his name, Aaron, but he also runs a podcast and he recently had Rob Cole on and they were talking about instruction specifically. And they talked a little bit about ecological, but it was more adding intention to your instruction, paying attention to how you word things and how you set up your environment. I think those things are tremendously valuable for jujitsu. Is it
yeah,
Kabir?
Kabir, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's going back to when I dropped into standard for the first time, like and all the notes I took, and I talked to Greg about it after, and he was like, just over there taking notes, but like I wasn't writing down the games. Like for me, it was like what blew me away was how he structured the time and blocked off everything. Like so, every minute of the class was, you know, is down. He's got it down to to how long he gives instruction. So he gives himself 90 seconds so that he knows how much time he's talking between each game. So like um, he's basically optimizing how much time people are spending doing jujitsu in the class. So like for me, that was I was going back like, all right, how can I figure out this structure? And so that's a big thing for me. Like when I play in a class now, I'm down to I try to time block everything. Like the round is going to be this long. I have this long for a break, this long to give instructions, this long to kind of talk after, give myself a little bit of time. And if I don't use it, it'll get eaten up at the end with live rolling, which is good.
Mhm.
Um, but that was a big takeaway for me, just, how to time box the class and make use of all the time and not spend, so much time sitting around talking and lecturing people on what I want them to do.
Well, that's something too. You think about how often you guys both talked about it. Warm-ups, how much time is wasted on warm-ups. And then we get into direct instruction, how much time is spent doing that. You look at the average martial arts class or average jiu-jitsu class, and I bet you most are probably getting what, 20 minutes of rolls.
Yeah. An
And
hour.
you figure you got an hour, hour and a half, depending on how you run your classes. We run typically hour-long classes. My Friday that I run, I kind of let it run until people are done. I don't care if it's an hour and a half, whatever you want to do. But you think about the value, how much faster people would get good at jiu-jitsu if they did more, if they did an hour's worth. If it's an hour class, they're doing an hour's worth, or even 45 minutes worth minus the adjustments and all the other things of live training. You're going to get better so much faster. I mean, so how maybe you'll shed a little insight on that because I can tell you that's one of the areas I'm looking at, and I kind of modify little bits and pieces and try to figure out a lot of it on my own when I'm running my classes. Is how long are these games going to go for? Um, how much time am I going to take on like feedback loops? I like to do feedback sessions, bring them all together and say, hey, what was working for you? And they start to describe it. Hey, show me real quick, and then that's for the benefit of everybody, of course. How long do you? How do you? What did you learn about kind of segmenting your classes on time frames?
So I initially went back and I kind of just did what Greg was doing and then started playing with it on my own. But um, so when I went there, he was doing he does top bottom, whatever it is, or it's mount or whatever. But we do 3 minutes, basically offense, defense, and then switch. Um, and then I guess after a while, I did that for a little while, and then I started doing, all right, well, why don't we just switch? And I guess he does the same thing now, and a lot of other people do, but just up the round, give people more time to explore. So do like 6 to 8 minutes total. And
Mm,
then you just switch every time, every attempt or every win loss, if it's a win loss or um, so that way you just give them a whole window of time to kind of explore and you can kind of just sit back and watch the room and help, like you were saying earlier, you can kind of then go around, you give everyone a general shell of a game that kind of fits all levels, and then you can go around within that 8 minutes or however long the round is. And as they're playing, like, the more advanced people, you can kind of hone in something for them or give them more constraints to make it harder for them. And they kind of work independently. So I think that's the last couple classes I've done, that's the approach I like to take is a longer round. And that also helps people kind of moderate their intensity, I think.
mm.
If you only give them 3 minutes, they're going to try and jam in as many,
Yeah.
uh, attempts as they can. But, if hey, we're going to play this for 10 minutes, you know, you got 10 minutes to play around in the situation as long as you can, take turns, blah, blah, and go. And like, people will moderate themselves a little bit better and they kind of explore a lot for a lot longer.
And then so how many games you run on average in a class? I mean, obviously it varies, but on average.
Um, so that depends too. So if I kind of map it out again, like I like to block it out. So if you do 6 minutes, I do like an 8 minute warm up and then 6 minutes. I can fit about 4 or 5 in there
Mm.
in an hour and 15-minute class and still have about 20 minutes for live rolling. So
And the cool thing is you're putting in work the whole time. That's the first thing my students said on Friday. We started running these games. They're like, "Holy shit, I'm freaking tired. Like we haven't even rolled yet. I'm exhausted." And it's like, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, So yeah, you get more value out of your rolls too.
But yeah, and then it goes and then go back to Rob's and the warm up is the other thing I started doing was like more contextual like game rolling. So like if we're if the focus is a pin or a guard for the most of the games,
Hmm.
the warm up's going to be like standing grip fighting, getting to a leg or getting to the body or something like that. So you're still doing part of the game as a warm up, but you could strain it to a point where people aren't doing mat returns and stuff like that.
Right.
Um, but you're moving around for 8 minutes or so and getting warmed up, and then you're going to go into something else.
That's good because I mean, like thinking about it too, the whole like I don't pay for jujitsu lessons to listen to people talk. Like if I learn, like that's why I have a podcast so I can hear people talk. Like the last thing I want to do is sit there and like when you're talking about the feedback loop, at least you're doing something physical with it. I remember one class in particular, we had and like 45 minutes of rolling time left. I'm like, this is gonna be great. Live rolling starts now. I get 45 minutes. Cool. 30 minutes in, guy stops the class. All right, guys, bring it in. I'm like, okay, maybe, we're going to do one-on-one roles and watch and critique or whatever. And since we're all military members here, we all understand like this nightmare in a class. He said, okay, let's go ahead and have an AAR. I want everybody to go around and give me one good thing and one bad thing. There are fucking 15 people in class.
Oh man.
I'm like looking at the clock. I'm like, that's another round. It's like going through. Yep, that's another round. Like, oh, I really like. It was insane. Like, why? The best way to get better at jujitsu is just to do more jujitsu. It's like, how do you get better at doing push-ups? You do more
Mhm.
push-ups. Like, get used to doing that. It's so I understand that and I respect that as well for this approach because as much time as you can use for efficiency, especially in jujitsu that preaches efficiency, like nobody really gives a shit about like what my personal feelings were when I'm teaching like a key lock. Like, let me just show it and let's run through it. Like,
Well, I think emulation is super important too, because you're gonna have people that are gonna go on YouTube and they're gonna watch the favorite grappler and they're gonna,
yeah,
bring some of those things back to the mat anyway. I mean, that's why like if I do a feedback loop, it's like, yeah, dude, I'll take 3 or 4 minutes tops and just kind of go around the room a little bit. If anybody has anything, they show it. Like if they're explaining, oh, well, I grab a 2-on-1 and then I block the heel. No, 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 no. Show me, show me, show me. Like I want to
yeah,
see it. And then they talk through it. And then then all of a sudden you look around the room, you start people like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And you're like, all right, cool. This guy's going to try that. We put him back in that game again. So that's kind of how I do it. I don't always do it. It depends on how many games I've got planned to go or whatever. But if I've got, just a couple of games I want to kind of hound, spend more time on or a couple different layers of a few games, that's something I like to do because I feel like it also gives them buy-in. Um, and I feel like that learner motivation aspect, it kind of helps with that a little bit. Because that's the other thing I've gotten back from people that sold me on this approach was when I started just trying it out. I'm like, well, fuck it. The only way I'm going to learn this is to just do it. Is immediately the feedback was, man, like that class was on point. The energy was great. Everybody was just enjoying it and bought into it. And I think it's because they had some stake in the game. It shouldn't, like you said, I shouldn't just sit there and listen to somebody talk. And I love my coach and I love my gym and I love the other coaches that coach there. But it's like you go to a seminar. I don't want to hear you talk for 45 minutes. I want to see stuff. I want to see material. Let's get into it,
yeah,
you know?
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, yeah, we
Yeah.
can pay BJJ fanatics to sit around I can sit on my couch and watch somebody talk about jujitsu.
Yeah.
If
Yep.
my ass is on the mat, I want to be rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, and like the feedback stuff, I mean, that's the other fun part of this for me is like you get to do and try out stuff that no we haven't done before and um is not traditionally part of like jiu-jitsu classes like if you want to have feedback one class I did I broke like 4 different groups up and we were just exploring head and arm trapping in head and arm from different I had one in mount, one in front headlock, one group in mount, one group in front headlock, one group on the back, and one group was somewhere else. So we were starting in front headlock from different positions and playing around. And so we did that for like 10 minutes and then had each group kind of come up and demonstrate for a minute. Like you don't have to talk, just play the game you played just now in front of everyone so they can see what you did. So then they get to see a front headlock from everyone just gets to watch. Like no one had to explain anything and you get feedback and it only took like 4 minutes. Uh, to do it. And I was like, well, that's a good way of, I don't have to sit there and talk either. So, uh,
Yeah.
but
Well,
yeah, I
and
mean, you get to experiment with stuff like that. Like that you don't have to get up there and lecture to give people feedback.
Mhm.
They can just watch other people play the game too.
We did a thing where, and this is, I thought this was interesting to kind of highlight how effective this method can be is other instructors in my gym don't necessarily, and we'll talk about that here in a second too, but not everybody in my gym subscribes to the same approach, and the other coaches don't necessarily. They've implemented some of it in there, which is great to see, but I'm never going to impose on somebody what they should or shouldn't be doing as far as a coach. I'll give my insight on what I'm experiencing. The students can speak for themselves, and the coach can make their own decision. But um, we did a month focus on X guard, right? That was what the other coaches were doing on their classes is everybody agreed we're going to do a focal point on X guard specifically for this 4 week stretch. And so they were teaching techniques in the IP format of X guard, different sweeps, different leg entanglements, different, blah, 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 blah. And so when it came to my Friday class, a couple weeks in, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna run an experiment. You guys have been doing this for like 3 weeks. And so I said, set up a game, right? And basically it was just top player standing up over bottom player, create connections with your feet to them, to their hips, connect to their legs with your hands, and then stay connected. Try to find a way to off balance and put their hands on the mat or their hips on the mat. And I'm like, this should create a bunch of opportunity for all this X guard shit people have been doing, right? Like it should. I didn't give them that. I didn't give them any examples or anything. I just gave them the game and let them run it. And I'm assuming in my brain, I'm like, if IP works as good as everybody says it does, then I should see a shit ton of X guard emerging from this game, right? I mean, you'd think, because the top player, all they were supposed to do was maintain their balance. Like the first layer, they weren't even trying to guard pass. And I didn't see a single X guard come out the entire time. Like a traditional X guard. I saw a single leg X. Saw a lot of like dummy sweeps and shit, and stuff like that. But I didn't. I saw some other things, but I didn't see any X guard come out. And I'm like, that was kind of an eye opener to me. Is if the way we were doing it was so effective, then I should have seen a bunch of this. Why didn't I see not one after 3 weeks of immersion into X guard? So I don't know if you had anything to speak to on that, if you've had a similar experiences or.
Yeah, we just did that on Mount, but we did X guard for a while in a couple of classes I did. And for one, I think that's one of the funnest games to do.
Mhm.
Um, because I've told people that is because if you're newer and you're passing and you get one leg pass and you kind of get put in X guard, it is an uncomfortable feeling to be
Mhm.
floating there. Like
Yeah.
so like if anything, like learning how to kind of surf that and keep your balance and it's useful. And
Mhm.
and as the guard player, like that's something we don't talk about when we teach X guard is like really your two pass or hips or hands. Like, people get down on the weeds over, should my left foot be on top or my right foot be on top? I'm
Mhm.
like, put their hands on the mat. I don't care where your feet are. Like, that's not the point.
Yeah.
If you can consistently get under someone's guard and put their hands on the mat, if you can do that like 80% of the time, you're gonna get on top a lot. Like
Mhm.
it doesn't matter how you sweep them. Like if you can post their hands on the mat or you can get their hips on the mat, you're in leg entanglements. Like hips on the mat's leg entanglements, hands on the mat sweeps. Like you're wrestling up all day long.
Mhm.
So like for me, that's one of my favorite games is getting underneath guards. Like I don't have to call it X guard, but getting underneath someone's guard, your hips under theirs,
Yep.
connected with all four of your connections, and then trying to put their hands or their hips on the mat. And for one, as a top person, it builds comfort in just existing on top of someone in their guard, which is usually a very uncomfortable position to be in.
Mhm.
And people don't like that. So like for me, I love just being I love when people put me in X guard now because I
Yeah.
don't feel like I'm gonna fall over and I can fight their grips and um pass their guard a lot easier. And then two, like playing it, like all you got to think about is hips or hands. If I put you on your hips, I'm wrestling up, put you on your hands, like I'm gonna attack your posts and sweep you over. So I don't have to think about all the different series of, grab this post, sweep, roll, all the
Yep.
steps of X guard things. But yeah, and the other thing to your point, and that's kind of how I approach the classes especially in a mixed gym where it's like IP and then that. Yeah, if you're doing long weeks of focusing on a certain area, at some point it is nice to have just a class where like we're just gonna practice what we've been doing for a couple weeks. Like, you get little chunks of that in those other classes, but like it's nice to have a whole class. Like, all right, now we're gonna play this live and you try out all these things we've been doing. Like
Hmm.
sometimes you just need a practice class. I think and that's really the only way I think the two methods kind of mesh well is if you have a class like that where we've been IP focused on this for a while. I've shown you all these solutions to this problem. Now we're just going to play with the problem for a whole class and see how well you can put it into action. Um, and
Yeah.
one, you'll either see it, or two, you'll see like what you said, where people abandon everything they've just been shown, and then they'll
Yep.
try to figure out what works for them.
Well, I think it's drawing context to it because once I told them, okay, now the next layer is try to find a way to their back, all of a sudden
Mhm.
you started to see X card come out.
Right.
And so that kind of shows you maybe we did a little bit too much of X card to Kiss of the Dragon or whatever. You know what I mean? Like you did too much of the same thing. You didn't give them, first of all, you didn't give them the problem where this actually fits. But that's a whole nother conversation, but that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, it's awesome to like really, I guess, deep dive a bit more. I mean, I know I'm barely scratching the surface here, but it is good to hear things that like I agree with, I guess is the best way to put it. Because like being a skeptic of it, you know, I don't want to shut anything out. If you can't change your mind about something, then there's something fundamentally wrong with you, or maybe you should try to open your mind up to it. So maybe I'll go to one of Randy's ecological classes and then form another opinion and then do all that. So, but I am very open to it. So
Well,
I'm
and that's the difference, Rob, is you're open to it. Like there's a lot of people that are just shut off, you know.
and all right, now I get on another rant. So like I came from a traditional martial arts background, right? And for the longest time, you can only do a front kick this way. This is the most correct way to do a front kick. And like I jump back in maybe 10, 15 years later, people are doing it different. Why are you guys doing it different? Oh, it's more efficient this way. But for whatever it was, because somebody had like, oh, maybe this works. This is just a very weird example. Like people are very staunch, like, we don't do it that way. This is the way it's always been. What is Facebook marketing? I don't know what that is, so we're not going to do it. Because nobody's on Facebook anymore, or I don't know, like you just still mail in postcards to people. That's what gets people's attention. Like they worked 30 years ago, man, but like you got to kind of
Yep.
change with it. So I never really liked the it's only this way, it'll always be this way, tradition for tradition's sake. Like
Hmm.
I always go back to like we're not fighting for warlords for our clan, so I don't have to really listen to it. If I'm gonna be real about it. I'm giving you money to teach me jujitsu, so if I don't like it
Yeah.
here, I can go somewhere else. But
Yeah.
no, I think people need to be more open about stuff, and the fact that there's people who have been doing jujitsu for years and will shut out an opinion, um, and not ever what like people talk to them about. I think that's kind of really not that good in general, just in life, but especially martial arts. Because it used to be the real coolness was what was it? Rubber guard. Rubber guard was gonna change the world. Rubber guard has absolutely changed the world. Nothing but rubber guard. And then like it's not the newest thing. Everybody else is like working on something else, and that's okay. So it's not
Hmm.
like we haven't experienced like giant changes in the way games are played. Like Gordon Ryan, he's gone from like really awesome leg locks now just crushing people.
Yeah.
Like I think that's not they say he's not dangerous there, but I think it's really cool to see a complete change in somebody's game. Like it's doable. Anybody can do it. Just be a little open, man. I thought we were going against this traditional stuff by doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but whatever, man.
Yeah.
So, but
Definitely too clicky.
too clicky,
Definitely.
man.
Yeah.
Too clicky. But Aaron, I appreciate you coming on, man. I really do. It's been interesting to learn about this a bit more and hear you and Randy talk more about it and me just kind of sit back and listen a little bit to it. So thank you for coming on the show today, man. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
And before we head off, where can people find you? Like, socials or anything you want to promote? Like, go ahead.
Um, yeah, on mainly on the Discord all day. Ecological dynamics for submission grappling. have an Instagram. I don't put out much content on there, just because everyone else is doing the games and stuff on Instagram. That's not kind of really what I'm trying to promote, but um, yeah, it's really just on there, just community, trying to connect to people, share ideas, and see what other people are doing, and what we can do to kind of keep the ball rolling. We are planning another camp right now, and I don't think we're ready to announce where it's going to be, but we're looking around September, October timeframe in the U.S. So, but we're in the works for that. So that should be coming out here soon.
Maybe, hopefully, beautiful Charleston, South Carolina. Maybe. No.
No,
Ah.
soon, but yeah, not this one. We already have someone willing to host the next couple. So
And then real quick, because I was not a Discord guy before I me and me and Rob joked around. I in my profession, the first time I ever heard of Discord was in relation to some cyber crimes things.
mhm.
So I never got involved in Discord until your channel. So I found your channel. So it is a little bit different with Discord. Can you just real quick, how can somebody join the Discord?
Yeah, so I have links up on. There's a link tree in the Instagram. Um, and I'm new to Discord too, so I didn't know about it before I created this. But there's a link tree up in the Instagram with a link to it, and I'll post another. I have a QR code on. If you have a rash guard, there's a QR code on the sleeve. That's the join code. Also, yeah, there's a couple posts floating around, but I think you can search for it too. If you join Discord, search for Ecological Dynamics for submission grappling, it should pop up.
Yeah, if you're on Instagram, it's the really awesome octopus logo that I love. You know you're
Yeah,
in the right place, you find that.
yeah,
Nice. Well, once again, Aaron, thanks for coming on the show and talking with us about ecological jiu-jitsu, the learning method behind it,
yeah.
and you can find all of our old episodes. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thanks for listening to our podcast, Big Jiu-Jitsu Show. You can find all of our old episodes at bigjjshow.com. Thank you to our sponsor, Strap and Roll Soap Company. If you want to go grab some awesome soap, is for real. I promise this time coming soon. Again, he's coming back to the States. He'll be making it more. But I'm Rob,
I'm Randy.
and we'll catch you guys next time.